What if a single decision, an unplanned discovery, or even an unpredictable twist of fate could shape the path of humanity forever? Picture this: a quiet moment explodes into chaos, a seemingly minor event cascades into a global revolution, or an ordinary day transforms into one that would be remembered for centuries. Throughout history, the world as we know it has hinged on such defining instances, some celebrated in textbooks, some shrouded in mystery, but all monumental in their impact. From the fall of ancient empires to groundbreaking inventions and even chance encounters that unlocked new eras, these pivotal events reveal the incredible power of a single moment. Today, we will take you on a journey through 25 of the most extraordinary events that didn't just alter history, they redefined it. Some of these stories may feel familiar, while others might surprise you, leaving you to wonder how often the fate of the world rests on the smallest, most unexpected actions. Are you ready to uncover these history-changing moments and explore the fascinating ripples they created? Let's get started. Now turning to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, we explore a moment that acted as the spark for one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. On a summer day in 1914, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne and his wife were visiting Sarajevo when a young nationalist, Gavrilo Princip, fired the fatal shots. What seemed like a localized act of violence quickly unraveled a delicate web of alliances and political tensions that had long been brewing across Europe. At the heart of this explosive situation were rivalries between major powers such as Austria-Hungary, Russia, Germany, and France, each entangled in commitments to protect or challenge one another. The assassination set off a chain of ultimatums and declarations, with Austria-Hungary targeting Serbia, Russia stepping in to support its Slavic ally, Germany backing Austria-Hungary, and eventually most of Europe being dragged into a catastrophic conflict. This single event transformed a regional dispute into a global war, reshaping borders, economies, and societies. It was more than just an isolated tragedy. It marked the beginning of World War I, forever altering the course of the 20th century and leaving lessons still relevant to our modern understanding of international relations. Moving forward, we'll step back even further in time to another pivotal moment that changed the fate of empires and the very way the world connected. Moving forward, we arrive at the year 1453, a moment that marked the dramatic fall of Constantinople and irreversibly altered the course of history. This powerful city, long regarded as the jewel of the Byzantine Empire, had stood as a critical crossroads between Europe and Asia for over 1,000 years. Its strategic location controlled key trade routes, making it not just a center of commerce but also a focal point of cultural and political influence. However, the empire had been gradually weakened by internal strife and external threats, leaving it vulnerable to the growing power of the Ottoman forces led by Sultan Mehmed II. In a decisive campaign, Mehmed launched a siege on the city, utilizing advanced military tactics and massive artillery, including the now famous bombard cannons. After weeks of relentless attack, the defenders could no longer withstand the onslaught, and on May 29th, the city fell to the Ottomans. This event not only signaled the end of the Byzantine Empire, but also marked a major shift in global power dynamics. The fall of Constantinople forced European nations to seek alternative trade routes to bypass Ottoman-controlled territories, fueling the age of exploration and eventually leading to the discovery of new lands. Furthermore, as Byzantine scholars fled westward, they brought with them ancient texts and knowledge that helped ignite the Renaissance, transforming European art, science, and culture. The fall of Constantinople was far more than just a military conquest. It was a turning point that reshaped the world's economic and intellectual landscape, creating ripples that can still be felt in modern times. With this profound transformation in focus, let us now journey to another moment when the power of a single event echoed across centuries, shaping the foundations of governance and democracy. Now turning to the year 1215, we encounter the signing of the Magna Carta, an event that became a cornerstone in the evolution of governance and liberty. This historic document was born out of deep tensions between King John of England and his barons, who had grown increasingly frustrated by the king's heavy-handed rule, excessive taxation, and military failures. In a bid to curb the monarchy's unchecked power, these barons united and forced the king to agree to a charter of liberties at Runnymede, a meadow alongside the River Thames. The Magna Carta, which translates to Great Charter, contained groundbreaking principles that resonated far beyond the immediate conflict. It established the idea that even a monarch is not above the law, introducing fundamental rights like protection from illegal imprisonment and the promise of swift and fair justice. Although initially intended to address the grievances of a specific group, its broader principles laid the groundwork for constitutional governance. Over time, the Magna Carta influenced the development of legal systems and inspired other landmark documents, including the United States Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Despite its origins in a medieval standoff, this document became a symbol of the enduring struggle for freedoms and rights, echoing across centuries and continents. With this pivotal moment shaping the foundation of modern democracy, we now turn our attention to an event that revolutionized medicine and forever changed the course of human health. Now turning to the year 1928, we find ourselves in the laboratory of Alexander Fleming, a bacteriologist whose accidental discovery would redefine the world of medicine. While studying Staphylococcus bacteria, Fleming noticed something unusual on a petri dish he had mistakenly left uncovered. A type of mold had grown, and around it, the bacteria had been destroyed. Intrigued, he identified the mold as belonging to the Penicillium genus, and from it, he extracted a substance he named penicillin. This chance observation marked the beginning of a medical revolution. Before penicillin, bacterial infections like pneumonia, syphilis, and septicemia often proved fatal, with no effective treatment to combat them. But with the development and mass production of penicillin during the 1940s, especially during World War II, a new era of antibiotics emerged. Soldiers wounded in battle could now survive infections that would have once been deadly, and the general population gained access to a treatment that profoundly improved public health. The discovery saved millions of lives, reducing mortality rates for countless diseases and sparking a wave of innovation in pharmaceuticals. Beyond its immediate impact, penicillin paved the way for the invention of numerous other antibiotics, each targeting different bacterial infections. The ripple effects of this discovery are nearly impossible to overstate, as it fundamentally transformed how diseases are treated and prevented. It is a poignant reminder of how even an unintentional observation can alter the course of human history. With this innovation safeguarding human health, we now move to an event that democratized knowledge and fueled cultural and scientific advancements on an unprecedented scale. Now turning to the mid-15th century, we arrive at an invention that would forever change the way knowledge was shared and preserved. Johann Gutenberg, a goldsmith from Mainz, Germany, developed the printing press around the year 1450. This revolutionary device introduced movable type, enabling the mass production of books and written material in a way that had never been possible before. Prior to this invention, books were painstakingly copied by hand, a labor-intensive process that made them expensive and accessible only to the elite. Gutenberg's printing press drastically reduced the cost of book production and made literature available to a much wider audience. One of the first major works produced on this press, the Gutenberg Bible, set the stage for a cultural and intellectual awakening. This newfound ability to circulate ideas and information quickly and widely had ripple effects across every facet of society. It fueled the Protestant Reformation by allowing Martin Luther's ideas to spread across Europe at an unprecedented speed, challenging the authority of the Catholic Church and sparking debates that reshaped religious and political landscapes. It also accelerated the scientific revolution, as scholars were now able to disseminate discoveries and theories with far greater efficiency. Scientific knowledge, once confined to a few, began to reach a broader audience, laying the groundwork for modern science and technology. Beyond this, the printing press promoted literacy among the general public, empowering individuals to think critically and participate actively in intellectual and cultural discussions. The democratization of knowledge sparked by Gutenberg's invention remains one of the most transformative milestones in human history. From religious reform to scientific breakthroughs and cultural enrichment, the printing press played an indispensable role in shaping the modern world. With the spread of ideas in full motion, we now turn to an event whose devastation altered the global landscape and ushered in one of the darkest chapters in human history. As the next chapter of history unfolds, we find ourselves in the midst of the year 1945, a time when the world was gripped by the final stages of World War II. On the 6th of August, a single event in the Japanese city of Hiroshima marked the dawn of a new and terrifying era. The United States dropped an atomic bomb codenamed Little Boy, unleashing an explosion of unprecedented magnitude. Just 3 days later, on the 9th of August, the city of Nagasaki suffered a similar fate with the detonation of the Fat Man bomb. The immediate devastation was catastrophic. Tens of thousands perished instantly, and those who survived faced unimaginable suffering due to radiation exposure, severe burns, and long-term health complications. Beyond the staggering human toll, the psychological and moral implications of these bombings sent shockwaves around the globe. These unprecedented attacks played a pivotal role in ending World War II, as Japan announced its surrender on the 15th of August, bringing an end to years of global conflict. However, the consequences of these events extended far beyond the battlefield. The atomic bombings spotlighted the lethal potential of nuclear weapons, igniting a global arms race that defined much of the geopolitical tension during the Cold War era. Nations sought to develop their own nuclear arsenals, leading to a precarious balance of power based on mutually assured destruction. On an ethical level, the bombings raised profound questions about the morality of targeting civilian populations and the limits of warfare, debates that persist to this day. They also underscored the devastating consequences of scientific advancements when used for destructive purposes, reminding humanity of the delicate balance between progress and responsibility. From the ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki emerged urgent calls for peace, disarmament, and the establishment of international bodies such as the United Nations, aimed at preventing such tragedies in the future. As we navigate through this painful yet pivotal moment in history, we now shift our focus to another event that reshaped societies and economies, the relentless grip of a catastrophic pandemic known as the Black Death. As the next challenge unfolds, we step back to the 14th century, a time when Europe was ravaged by a pandemic so devastating that it altered the course of history forever. The Black Death, caused by the spread of the bubonic plague, swept across the continent between 1347 and 1351, claiming the lives of an estimated 25 million people, nearly 1/3 of Europe's population. This catastrophic loss of life brought profound and far-reaching changes to societies, economies, and even the spiritual beliefs of the time. Entire villages were abandoned as populations dwindled, leaving fields untended and trade routes disrupted. The massive labor shortage that followed gave surviving workers newfound bargaining power, breaking the rigid feudal system and paving the way for increased wages and social mobility. Economically, the sudden scarcity of people fueled innovation, as societies sought more efficient ways to produce goods and sustain themselves. On a societal level, the plague eroded traditional structures and raised doubts about established authorities, both secular and religious. Many turned to alternative beliefs or movements, as the inability of the Church to provide answers or solace during the crisis led to growing distrust. Yet, in the midst of this widespread despair, the pandemic also catalyzed a cultural and artistic awakening. The fragility of life became a recurring theme in art and literature, inspiring works that reflected the uncertainty and existential questions of the era. The Black Death served as a grim reminder of humanity's vulnerability to nature's forces, but it also became a powerful agent of transformation, reshaping the very fabric of the world in ways that would resonate for centuries. With the echoes of this devastating plague still lingering in history, we now turn our attention to an event that symbolized the birth of a revolutionary movement, the storming of the Bastille. As the next challenge unfolds, we journey to the late 18th century, where a single moment in France ignited a wave of change that would ripple around the globe. On July 14, 1789, the storming of the Bastille marked the beginning of the French Revolution and became a powerful symbol of resistance against tyranny. The Bastille, a medieval fortress in Paris, was seen as a representation of royal oppression and the absolute monarchy of King Louis XVI. Although its military significance had waned by this time, it remained a stark reminder of the king's unchecked power, as political prisoners were often held there without trial. On that fateful day, a crowd of revolutionaries, driven by growing unrest over food shortages, economic hardship, and widespread inequality, gathered outside the fortress. Their initial aim was to seize gunpowder and arms stored within, but the event quickly escalated into a full-scale assault. After hours of confrontation, the guards surrendered, and the revolutionaries triumphantly took control of the Bastille. The storming of the Bastille was not just a physical act of rebellion. It was a profound declaration of the people's demand for liberty, equality, and fraternity. It sent shockwaves through France, legitimizing the revolutionary cause and signaling the end of absolute monarchy. The event also inspired other oppressed groups around the world to challenge their own systems of power, making it a beacon for movements advocating freedom and democracy. The storming of the Bastille remains an enduring symbol of the people's power to shape history, reminding us that the pursuit of justice often requires courage and collective action. With the echoes of this transformative event still resonating, we now reflect on a moment that forever altered the religious and political landscape of Europe: Martin Luther's daring stand with his 95 Theses. Now turning to a pivotal moment in the early 16th century, we examine the actions of a single man that sparked a movement reshaping religion and politics across Europe. In the year 1517, Martin Luther, a German monk and theology professor, took a bold and historic step. Deeply troubled by the practices of the Catholic Church, particularly the sale of indulgences, payments made to absolve sins and reduce time in purgatory, Luther felt compelled to challenge what he saw as widespread corruption and spiritual exploitation. On October 31st, he famously nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church, a common practice for inviting scholarly debate at the time. These Theses outlined his objections, emphasizing that salvation could not be bought but was a gift of grace received through faith alone. While intended as a call for reform within the Church, Luther's critique quickly gained traction far beyond academic circles. Thanks to the relatively recent invention of the printing press, copies of his Theses spread rapidly across Europe, reaching both clergy and laypeople in a matter of weeks. This unprecedented dissemination of ideas ignited what became known as the Protestant Reformation, a movement that fundamentally challenged the authority of the Pope and the Catholic Church. Luther's actions fractured Christendom, leading to the emergence of Protestant denominations and a dramatic shift in Europe's religious map. Beyond its theological impact, the Reformation profoundly influenced politics, governance, and education, as rulers and communities aligned themselves with divergent religious philosophies. Martin Luther's stand demonstrated the immense power of ideas and conviction. proving that questioning established systems can alter the course of history. With this transformation taking root, we now journey to the birth of a nation that forever changed the trajectory of global democracy, the signing of the American Declaration of Independence. Now turning to the birth of a nation, we examine an event that became a cornerstone of global democracy, the signing of the American Declaration of Independence in the summer of 1776. Amid rising tensions between the 13 American colonies and Great Britain, years of political disputes and economic grievances had reached a boiling point. The colonies were deeply opposed to British taxation without representation and the increasingly oppressive measures imposed by the Crown. Seeking a decisive break from British rule, representatives of the Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia. On July 4th, they collectively adopted the Declaration of Independence, a document primarily authored by Thomas Jefferson. This declaration was far more than a statement of separation. It was a bold assertion of universal principles, declaring that all men are created equal and endowed with unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This landmark moment did not merely establish the United States as a new entity on the global stage, but also sent shockwaves around the world. The ideas enshrined in the Declaration inspired revolutionary movements far beyond American borders, from France to Latin America, as oppressed peoples sought self-determination and the promise of freedoms outlined in this historic text. While the fight for independence required years of conflict and sacrifice, the Declaration itself laid the ideological foundation for what would ultimately become a free and democratic republic. Its enduring legacy serves as a reminder of the power of words and ideals to ignite change on a monumental scale. With these principles lighting the way, we now turn to an extraordinary moment in human history that showed the boundless potential of human ingenuity and determination, the first successful landing on the moon. With the next phase of the journey in sight, we arrive at a moment that transcended our planet and redefined what humanity could achieve, the first successful moon landing in 1969. At the height of the Cold War, the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union extended far beyond Earth's borders and into the vast expanse of space. The space race, a contest of technological and ideological superiority, gripped the world's imagination. In July of 1969, the Apollo 11 mission fulfilled a daring vision that had been set forth by President John F. Kennedy years earlier to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. On July 20th, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin descended onto the lunar surface while their crewmate Michael Collins orbited above in the command module. As Armstrong stepped onto the moon, his words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," echoed across history. These words captured the enormity of the achievement, one that represented not just an American victory, but a triumph for all of humanity. The sheer complexity of this mission, involving innovative engineering, meticulous planning, and extraordinary courage, demonstrated human ingenuity at its finest. The moon landing was more than a technical milestone. It united people around the world in awe and wonder. For a moment, geopolitical tensions seemed to fade as billions watched in collective amazement. The Apollo 11 mission not only symbolized the heights we can reach when guided by ambition and curiosity, but it also spurred advancements in science and technology that continue to shape our daily lives. The legacy of this extraordinary moment endures as a testament to what is possible when determination and vision align. As we reflect on this landmark event, let us now turn to another defining moment in history, one that reshaped the modern world and brought a symbolic end to decades of division: the fall of the Berlin Wall. With the next phase of the journey in sight, we step into the year 1989, a year that marked the unraveling of an era and the rise of a new chapter in global history. The fall of the Berlin Wall became an enduring symbol of freedom, unity, and the triumph of human will over oppressive division. For nearly 3 decades, this concrete barrier had stood not just as a physical divide between East and West Berlin, but as a stark representation of a fractured world. Built in 1961 during the height of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall was a barrier of ideology as much as it was of stone separating democratic Western Europe from the communist Eastern Bloc under the influence of the Soviet Union. Families were split, lives were disrupted, and the wall became a reminder of the pervasive tensions that defined the Cold War era. However, by the late 1980s, cracks in the communist regimes were beginning to show. Protests for freedom and reforms gained momentum not only in East Germany but across Eastern Europe. Economic stagnation and political dissatisfaction fueled a wave of change that seemed unstoppable. On November 9, 1989, a miscommunication by an East German government official led to an unexpected announcement that border crossings would be opened immediately. What followed was a moment of euphoric chaos. Thousands of East Berliners flooded to the checkpoints, overwhelming the guards who, caught off guard and unprepared, simply opened the gates. The scenes of people from both sides climbing the wall, embracing, and beginning to tear down the structure by hand captured the world's imagination. This was more than just the physical destruction of a barrier. It was the dismantling of the symbolic divide between two ideologies that had held the world hostage for decades. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union and the Cold War. It paved the way for the reunification of Germany in 1990 and signaled a broader shift toward democracy across Eastern Europe. The ripple effects of this event reshaped the political, economic, and social landscapes of the continent. It was a moment brimming with hope, a testament to the power of collective action and the unyielding human desire for freedom. As the echoes of celebration faded, the world found itself stepping into a new era, an era redefined by possibilities and the potential for unity. Now, as we move forward, let us explore yet another transformative event, one that redefined the global fight for human rights and justice, the abolition of slavery in the British Empire. Now turning to an event that redefined the principles of freedom and justice, we arrive at the year 1833, a moment that marked a monumental leap for human rights. The Slavery Abolition Act, passed by the British Parliament, was a landmark decision that outlawed slavery across most of the British Empire. For centuries, the transatlantic slave trade had devastated countless lives, with millions of Africans forcibly taken from their homelands, subjected to inhumane conditions, and sold into a life of brutal servitude. The economic foundations of entire societies were built on their suffering, but the growing voices of dissent could not be silenced. The abolitionist movement had gained traction over decades, driven by relentless campaigners like William Wilberforce, Oloda Equiano, and Thomas Clarkson. These advocates, from former enslaved people to compassionate reformers, exposed the horrors of slavery through compelling narratives, art, and speeches. Public outrage surged, and moral arguments against the practice began to outweigh the economic justifications. The fight for abolition was far from swift or easy. It faced fierce opposition from those benefiting from the institution. However, perseverance triumphed. The Slavery Abolition Act built upon the earlier success of the Slave Trade Act of 1807, which had banned the transportation of slaves but had not yet eradicated the institution itself. The 1833 legislation was groundbreaking in its scope. It declared all enslaved persons in the British Empire to be free, with exceptions in certain territories until the full emancipation process was completed in 1838. This event not only liberated nearly 800,000 people, but also sent shockwaves across the globe. The abolition inspired similar movements in other nations, reinforcing the idea that human dignity and freedom are universal rights, not privileges. While the act did not erase the scars of slavery or address the systemic inequalities that persisted, it was a decisive step in the global fight for justice and equality. Its legacy continues to remind us of the power of collective action and the enduring struggle for human rights. As we reflect on this transformative moment, it leads us to examine another crucial event in history, one that redefined global security and geopolitics: the Blitzkrieg invasion of Poland. As the next challenge unfolds, we move to the year 1939, where a single military strategy would ignite a conflict of unprecedented scale. On September 1st, Germany launched its invasion of Poland, employing a tactic that would come to define the early stages of World War II, Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. This approach combined rapid troop movements, concentrated airstrikes, and overwhelming mechanized force to crush the enemy's defenses in record time. The invasion was swift, brutal, and meticulously planned, catching much of the world off guard. For Poland, the attack was devastating. Within weeks, the country was overrun, and its territory was partitioned between Germany and the Soviet Union under a secret pact. But the impact of this event extended far beyond Poland's borders. The aggressive maneuver shattered the fragile peace that had persisted since the end of World War I. Britain and France, bound by treaties to defend Poland, declared war on Germany just days later. The world was plunged into a conflict that would engulf continents and claim tens of millions of lives. The Blitzkrieg invasion also marked a turning point in military strategy. Traditional methods of warfare, reliant on trenches and drawn-out battles, gave way to this new, high-speed approach, rewriting the rules of combat. Beyond the battlefield, the invasion exposed the dangers of unchecked aggression, as the appeasement policies of the 1930s had failed to deter Adolf Hitler's ambitions. The fall of Poland proved to be only the beginning, setting the stage for a global struggle that would redefine geopolitics, economies, and societies. This moment serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of inaction in the face of rising threats. And as this pivotal event set the world on the path to a devastating war, our journey through history now turns to another powerful moment, one that saw an empire crumble and shaped the ideologies of a new era, the Russian Revolution. With the next phase of the journey in sight, we find ourselves in the year 1917, a time when the old order was crumbling under the weight of war, unrest, and inequality. The Russian Revolution, a seismic event in the history of the 20th century, began with the overthrow of the Tsarist regime. For centuries, the Romanov dynasty ruled Russia with an iron grip, maintaining an autocratic system that left the majority of its people in poverty while a small elite flourished. But as World War I dragged on, the cracks in this system became too large to ignore. The war placed immense strain on the economy, the military suffered devastating losses, and public discontent turned into outright revolt. In March of 1917, Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate, ending over 300 years of Romanov rule. A provisional government took his place, but it struggled to address the issues that plagued the nation. The situation remained volatile as different factions vied for power, and by November, a second revolution erupted. This time, it was led by the Bolsheviks, a radical socialist group under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Promising peace, land, and bread, the Bolsheviks gained the support of workers and soldiers, successfully seizing power and establishing a government based on communist principles. The revolution was not just a national event, it had global implications. It marked the birth of the world's first socialist state, inspiring revolutionary movements across the globe and striking fear into capitalist governments. Over time, the Russian Revolution would lead to the creation of the Soviet Union, a superpower that would play a central role in shaping the political, economic, and ideological landscape of the 20th century. Yet, the revolution also came at a tremendous cost. The shift to communism was marked by years of civil war, repression, and the controversial policies that followed. Millions of lives were lost as the country grappled with the chaos of transformation. This event serves as a vivid reminder of how entrenched inequality and the pressures of war can ignite sweeping change. And as we reflect on how the Russian Revolution reshaped the world, we now pivot to another groundbreaking invention that forever changed the way we communicate, learn, and interact: the rise of the Internet. Now turning to a revolutionary invention of the late 20th century, we explore the rise of the Internet, a creation that has fundamentally reshaped the way we live, work, and connect. The Internet story begins decades before its full realization, rooted in the efforts of researchers and scientists to develop ways for computers to communicate with one another. In the early 1960s, the groundwork was laid with innovative concepts like packet switching, which allowed data to be broken into smaller pieces and transmitted efficiently. By the late 1960s, these ideas culminated in the creation of ARPANET, a project funded by the United States Department of Defense that connected academic institutions and paved the way for modern networking. Still, it would take years before the Internet reached everyday people. The development of key technologies like the Transmission Control Protocol and the Internet Protocol in the 1970s provided the backbone of this global network, enabling seamless communication between systems. By the 1980s, the network continued to expand, and the invention of the World Wide Web in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee brought the Internet closer to public use. His creation allowed users to access and share information through websites, creating an entirely new digital space. As the 1990s unfolded, the Internet became increasingly accessible, with advancements like graphical web browsers and faster connections encouraging widespread adoption. The Internet has transformed virtually every aspect of life. Communication became instantaneous, breaking down geographic barriers and connecting people across the world. Entire industries emerged and evolved, from e-commerce revolutionizing how we shop to social media redefining how we form relationships and share information. Knowledge became more accessible than ever as the Internet opened doors to boundless resources for learning and discovery. It also reshaped economies, creating new opportunities for innovation while disrupting traditional business models. Yet, like any powerful tool, the Internet has not come without challenges. Privacy concerns, misinformation, and the digital divide have sparked important debates about how this technology should be managed and accessed. Still, the Internet's impact is undeniable. It has become an essential part of modern life, influencing everything from education to entertainment, from healthcare to governance. As we marvel at how this invention has revolutionized human society, we turn our attention to another pivotal event, one that brought the world to the brink of destruction: the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. As the next challenge unfolds, we step into the tense days of October 1962, when the world teetered on the edge of nuclear destruction during the Cuban Missile Crisis. This 13-day confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union was sparked by the discovery of Soviet ballistic missiles in Cuba, only 90 miles from American shores. The tension had been building for years as the Cold War rivalry between these superpowers escalated, marked by an arms race and ideological clashes. The placement of those missiles in Cuba was perceived by the United States as a direct threat, leading to an intense standoff that put the entire globe on high alert. The crisis began when American reconnaissance flights revealed the construction of missile sites in Cuba. President John F. Kennedy and his administration faced an agonizing decision: how to respond without plunging the world into nuclear war. A naval blockade, referred to as a quarantine, was swiftly implemented to prevent further Soviet shipments of military equipment to Cuba. Kennedy demanded the immediate dismantling and removal of the missiles, while Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev held firm, insisting the weapons were defensive in nature. Behind the scenes, frantic negotiations took place as both nations sought to avoid catastrophe. The world watched as the crisis unfolded on an unprecedented scale. Citizens lived in fear of an impending nuclear exchange, and governments worldwide braced for the worst. The tension reached its crescendo on October 27th, often called Black Saturday, when a series of near misses threatened to trigger full-scale war. Among these was the downing of an American reconnaissance plane over Cuba, an act that could have easily escalated into open conflict. However, through secret communications and back-channel diplomacy, an agreement was finally reached. The Soviet Union agreed to remove its missiles from Cuba in exchange for a public assurance from the United States not to invade Cuba, along with a secret agreement to remove American missiles from Turkey at a later date. The Cuban Missile Crisis remains one of the most harrowing moments in modern history, one where a single misstep could have brought unimaginable devastation. It served as a sobering reminder of the dangers of nuclear weapons and the need for careful diplomacy. In its aftermath, both superpowers took steps to reduce the likelihood of such a crisis occurring again, including the establishment of a direct communication line known as the Hotline between Washington and Moscow. As we reflect on this precarious chapter in history, our journey now turns to an event of discovery that reshaped the world: the voyage of Christopher Columbus in 1492. Now turning to an event that opened an entirely new chapter in human history, we explore the voyage of Christopher Columbus in 1492. This journey, often taught as a tale of bold exploration, was a moment that irrevocably changed the course of the world. Funded by the Spanish monarchs King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, Columbus set sail across the Atlantic with the intent of finding a faster route to Asia. However, instead of reaching the riches of the East, he landed in what we now call the Americas. This accidental encounter marked the beginning of an era of exploration and colonization that would reshape economies, societies, and cultures on a global scale. Columbus's landing on these new shores paved the way for European powers to expand their influence and begin the colonization of vast territories, leading to unprecedented exchanges of goods, ideas, and even diseases. This phenomenon, known as the Columbian Exchange, introduced crops like potatoes, tomatoes, and maize to Europe, while Old World goods such as wheat, horses, and livestock reached the Americas. These exchanges radically transformed diets and economies across the continents, fueling population growth and economic shifts that are still felt today. However, alongside these advancements came profound consequences. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas led to the exploitation and displacement of indigenous populations. Entire civilizations, such as the Aztecs and the Incas, were devastated by conquest and diseases like smallpox brought by European settlers. Millions of lives were lost, and centuries-old cultures faced irreversible disruption. The voyage of Columbus also set the stage for the transatlantic slave trade, as European powers sought labor to exploit the resources of the New World. This dark chapter of human history saw the forced migration and enslavement of millions of Africans, an atrocity that left an enduring legacy of suffering and systemic inequality. Despite its complexities, Columbus's voyage remains one of the most significant turning points in history. It connected continents in a way that had never been done before, fostering a blending of cultures that shaped the modern world. Languages, cuisines, religions, and traditions began to intertwine, contributing to the diverse global societies we see today. As we reflect on this transformative journey, we now move forward to examine a pivotal moment in the 20th century, the tumultuous partition of India in 1947. With the next phase of the journey in sight, we arrive at the year 1947, a time when the Indian subcontinent faced one of its most defining and turbulent moments, the partition of India. After nearly 2 centuries of British colonial rule, the demand for independence had grown insurmountable, driven by decades of political movements and the tireless efforts of leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. However, as independence loomed, deep-seated religious and cultural divisions between Hindus and Muslims culminated in the creation of 2 separate nations, India and Pakistan. This division was intended to resolve communal tensions, but tragically, it unleashed a wave of chaos and suffering on an unimaginable scale. The partition saw the largest mass migration in human history, as more than 10 million people were uprooted, compelled to leave their homes in search of safety on either side of the newly drawn borders. Families were torn apart, and communities that had coexisted for generations were suddenly thrust into violent conflict. Trains carried desperate refugees across the border, often under harrowing conditions, and the roads were filled with endless caravans of people carrying whatever belongings they could salvage. Villages and towns became battlegrounds, and hundreds of thousands lost their lives to communal violence, starvation, and disease. The scars of partition went beyond physical suffering. It left an enduring legacy of trauma and displacement, with generations still grappling with the loss of their ancestral lands and cultural heritage. The division also solidified a political rivalry between India and Pakistan, resulting in decades of conflict and mistrust. These tensions continue to shape the geopolitics of South Asia, influencing military strategies, economic policies, and the lives of billions in the region. Amid the devastation, however, the partition also marked the birth of two nations charting their own paths. India embraced its identity as a secular democracy, while Pakistan began its journey as a homeland for Muslims. Both nations have since developed rich cultural and political landscapes that reflect their respective visions and struggles. The partition remains a reminder of how fragile social harmony can be, and a powerful example of the consequences of political and cultural division. As we conclude this chapter of upheaval and resilience, we now turn our attention to another transformative movement, one that reshaped not only nations but also the fight for equality on a global scale: the women's suffrage movement. As the next challenge unfolds, we step into the inspiring and relentless journey of the women's suffrage movement, a fight that broke barriers and redefined the very concept of equality. For decades, women across the world raised their voices, demanding what had long been denied to them: the right to vote. In the United States, the movement gained momentum in the mid-19th century, led by trailblazing figures such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Sojourner Truth. Their efforts culminated in a monumental achievement in the year 1920, when the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, granting American women the right to vote. This victory was not just a landmark for democracy in the United States, but a beacon of hope for suffragists across the globe. The ripple effects of this success resonated in other parts of the world, inspiring similar movements in nations like the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. Each country witnessed its own struggles and triumphs, with women organizing protests, hunger strikes, and relentless campaigns to demand equal representation and voice in political systems. In New Zealand, women achieved the right to vote as early as the year 1893, marking a historic first that set the stage for future movements worldwide. In the United Kingdom, suffragettes like Emmeline Pankhurst and her followers faced arrests and violence but steadily pushed the country toward change, resulting in partial suffrage in the year 1918 and full voting rights in the year 1928. These milestones collectively shaped the global narrative of gender equality, proving that change is possible through unwavering determination and action. Beyond securing the vote, the women's suffrage movement set the foundation for broader gender equality initiatives. It challenged deeply entrenched societal norms, paving the way for advancements in education, employment rights, reproductive rights, and political leadership for women. It demonstrated how social activism could dismantle centuries of systemic inequality and inspired movements for other marginalized groups to challenge oppression and fight for their rights. Today, when women step into voting booths or hold political office, they carry forward the legacy of courage and persistence forged by the suffragists who refused to be silenced. As the struggle for gender equality continues in many parts of the world, the women's suffrage movement remains a powerful reminder of what collective action can achieve. It underscores the importance of standing against injustice and amplifying the voices of those who are often overlooked. With this transformative movement as a testament to the resilience of human spirit, we now turn our attention to another event that altered the trajectory of history, the rise of Nazi Germany. As the next chapter of history takes a dark and foreboding turn, we examine the rise of Nazi Germany, a period that reshaped the world in ways both devastating and unparalleled. The story begins in the aftermath of World War I, with Germany grappling under the crushing terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Economic instability, soaring unemployment, and a deep sense of national humiliation created fertile ground for radical ideologies to take root. In this climate of despair, Adolf Hitler, a charismatic yet dangerous figure, emerged as a voice of supposed hope and restoration. Through fiery rhetoric and relentless propaganda, Hitler and his National Socialist Party promised to restore Germany's former glory, exploiting widespread discontent and deep-seated prejudices to gain support. By the year 1933, Hitler had risen to the position of Chancellor, a turning point that marked the beginning of a regime defined by oppression, expansionism, and terror. Within months, the Nazi Party consolidated power, dismantling democratic institutions and transforming Germany into a totalitarian state. Through tactics of fear and manipulation, they silenced opposition, controlled the media, and enforced their ideology with brutal efficiency. This included the systematic persecution of Jewish people, political dissidents, and other marginalized groups, laying the groundwork for atrocities that would horrify the world. As Hitler solidified his grip on power, his ambitions extended far beyond Germany's borders. In the year 1939, Germany's invasion of Poland marked the beginning of World War II, a conflict that would engulf nations and alter the global order. The Nazi regime's aggressive expansionism and military conquests plunged Europe into chaos, drawing countless countries into a war unlike any the world had seen before. However, it was not only the battlefield that bore witness to the horrors of this era. The Holocaust, one of history's darkest chapters, revealed the full extent of the Nazi regime's inhumanity. Over 6 million Jewish men, women, and children were murdered, along with millions of others who were deemed undesirable under Nazi ideology. This systematic genocide remains a haunting reminder of the consequences of unchecked hatred and absolute power. The rise of Nazi Germany serves as a sobering lesson about the fragility of democracy and the dangers of complacency in the face of growing extremism. It underscores the importance of vigilance, education, and the collective responsibility to prevent such horrors from happening again. As we reflect on this harrowing chapter, we are reminded of the resilience displayed by those who resisted tyranny and fought to restore humanity in the midst of unimaginable cruelty. With the rise and fall of the Third Reich etched deeply into the annals of history, we now move forward to uncover another pivotal moment, the fall of the Roman Empire. As the sun rises on the next chapter, we turn to the fall of the Roman Empire, a monumental event that signified the end of ancient Rome's dominance and paved the way for the development of medieval Europe and the modern Western world. This was not a single catastrophic moment, but rather a slow and complex decline that unfolded over centuries. At its height, the Roman Empire was a vast and powerful civilization, stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. However, internal weaknesses, external pressures, and a lack of unity gradually led to its downfall. Political corruption and instability became rampant, with frequent changes in leadership as emperors rose and fell in quick succession. This instability weakened the central authority, leaving the empire vulnerable. At the same time, the economy faced severe challenges, including heavy taxation, reliance on enslaved labor, and disruptions to trade. Adding to these internal struggles, the empire faced relentless external threats. various barbarian tribes, including the Visigoths, Vandals, and Ostrogoths, launched repeated invasions, chipping away at Roman territory. In the year 410, the sack of Rome by the Visigoths sent shockwaves across the empire, symbolizing its vulnerability and further eroding its power. Meanwhile, divisions within the empire itself played a crucial role in its downfall. The split into the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, created two separate entities that often struggled to work together effectively. This division left the Western Roman Empire particularly exposed to invasions and incapable of maintaining its vast borders. The final blow came in the year 476, when the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was overthrown by the Germanic leader Odoacer. This event is widely regarded as the official end of the Western Roman Empire, marking the beginning of the so-called Dark Ages in Europe. Despite the collapse of its western half, the legacy of the Roman Empire endured in many ways. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive for nearly 1,000 more years, preserving Roman traditions and serving as a bridge between ancient and modern civilizations. Moreover, the fall of the Western Roman Empire set the stage for the feudal systems and medieval kingdoms that would dominate Europe for centuries. Roman legal principles, architectural innovations, and cultural influences also left a lasting imprint on the Western world. The Latin language evolved into the Romance languages, while Roman law became the foundation for many legal systems we rely on today. The fall of the Roman Empire teaches us about the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations and the consequences of internal decay combined with external threats. It also highlights the enduring influence of a society whose achievements continue to shape our world. Moving forward, we now turn our attention to another transformative event, the Louisiana Purchase, a historic deal that redefined the boundaries of a young nation and reshaped the geopolitical landscape. Now turning to the Louisiana Purchase, we uncover a moment in history that forever transformed the trajectory of a budding nation. In the year 1803, the United States, under the leadership of President Thomas Jefferson, struck a deal with France that would more than double its territory. France, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, was in dire need of funds to support its military campaigns in Europe and was willing to part with a vast expanse of land stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. This monumental agreement came at a cost of $15 million, which may seem modest today but was a significant investment at the time. For the United States, this acquisition was not merely a land purchase, it was an enormous leap forward in its vision of westward expansion, a concept later known as Manifest Destiny. The Louisiana Purchase added approximately 828,000 square miles to the nation's territory, providing fertile lands, rich resources, and strategic control over the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans. The Mississippi River was a critical artery for trade and transportation, and the port of New Orleans served as a gateway for goods moving in and out of the expanding American frontier. This acquisition opened the door for settlers to venture westward, fueling economic growth and encouraging migration. However, this vast expansion also came with challenges. The newly acquired land was home to indigenous peoples whose lives and territories were profoundly affected as settlers encroached on their lands, leading to conflicts and displacement. Additionally, the question of whether slavery would be permitted in these new territories reignited tensions between northern and southern states, laying the groundwork for future divisions. Geopolitically, the Louisiana Purchase signaled the United States' emergence as a growing power on the world stage. By securing this vast territory, the young nation not only strengthened its position in North America, but also reduced the influence of European powers in the region. For France, selling the territory allowed Napoleon to focus on his European ambitions, but it also marked the end of the French colonial presence in mainland North America. Meanwhile, Spain, which had previously controlled much of this land, found its influence in the Americas increasingly diminished. The purchase demonstrated the United States' willingness to take bold actions to secure its interests, setting a precedent for future territorial acquisitions. The Louisiana Purchase remains one of the most significant land deals in history, shaping the physical, economic, and political landscape of the United States. It propelled the nation toward becoming a continental power and laid the foundation for its eventual transformation into a global force. As we reflect on this transformative event, we are reminded of how a single decision can yield ripple effects that echo through the centuries. Now we shift our focus to the Emancipation Proclamation, a landmark declaration that would challenge the fabric of a divided nation and alter the course of human rights in America. Now turning to the Emancipation Proclamation, we delve into a pivotal moment in the year 1863 that not only shaped the outcome of the American Civil War, but also redefined the nation's principles of freedom and equality. Proclaimed by President Abraham Lincoln on the first day of January, this historic declaration marked a turning point in the fight against slavery. The proclamation declared that all enslaved people in the Confederate States which were in rebellion against the Union would be forever free. While it did not immediately free every enslaved person, it fundamentally altered the Civil War's character by transforming it from a battle to preserve the Union into a moral crusade against slavery itself. The Emancipation Proclamation had profound symbolic and practical impacts. Symbolically, it affirmed the Union's commitment to ending slavery, aligning the war effort with the values of liberty and justice. This shift bolstered the Union's moral standing both domestically and internationally, discouraging foreign powers such as Britain and France from recognizing or supporting the Confederacy. Practically, it paved the way for the recruitment of formerly enslaved and free African Americans into the Union Army, adding over 186,000 soldiers to its ranks. These brave individuals not only contributed to Union victories but also fought for their freedom and the promise of a better future. Despite its significance, the proclamation did not come without challenges. It applied only to the Confederate States, leaving slavery untouched in the loyal border states and certain areas under Union control. Additionally, it faced strong resistance from Confederate leaders and their supporters, who saw it as a direct attack on their way of life and economic system. Nevertheless, it laid the groundwork for the eventual abolition of slavery nationwide with the passage of the 13th Amendment 2 years later. The proclamation also deepened the divide between the North and South, further entrenching the resolve of both sides to fight for their respective causes. The Emancipation Proclamation stands as a transformative act of leadership that reshaped the United States. It symbolized a crucial step toward fulfilling the nation's founding ideals and inspired movements for civil rights and equality in the years to come. As we reflect on this monumental declaration, we recognize how it forever altered the trajectory of the United States, casting a long shadow over its history and leaving an enduring legacy of hope and progress. Moving forward, we examine the Treaty of Versailles, an agreement that aimed to bring an end to one world conflict but inadvertently laid the groundwork for another. Now turning to the Treaty of Versailles, we explore a moment in the year 1919 that sought to bring peace to a world shattered by the devastation of World War I, but instead became a catalyst for future conflict. Signed on the 28th of June, this treaty officially ended hostilities between the Allied powers and Germany, imposing strict conditions on the defeated nation. The treaty was crafted with the intent of ensuring that Germany could never again pose a threat to international stability. Yet, the severity of its terms fueled resentment and set the stage for one of history's darkest chapters. The Treaty of Versailles placed immense financial and territorial burdens on Germany. Under its terms, Germany was required to pay massive reparations to the Allied nations, a sum so staggering it crippled the country's post-war economy. This economic strain led to widespread poverty, inflation, and unemployment, leaving German citizens with a profound sense of humiliation and injustice. Moreover, the treaty stripped Germany of its colonies and significant portions of its European territory, further damaging its national pride and economic capabilities. Equally significant was the clause that forced Germany to accept full responsibility for starting the war, a moral indictment that deepened the anger and frustration among its people. This resentment fostered the conditions that allowed extremist ideologies to rise. The scars left by the treaty became a rallying cry for political leaders who promised to restore Germany's honor and strength. Chief among them was Adolf Hitler, who exploited the widespread dissatisfaction to build support for his vision of a renewed and powerful Germany. This discontent, combined with the treaty's inability to resolve key political and territorial tensions in Europe, created a fragile peace that would collapse within 2 decades. The Treaty of Versailles, rather than securing lasting stability, planted the seeds of division and bitterness that would erupt with the onset of World War II. While the treaty's architects aimed to achieve peace, its unintended consequences serve as a poignant reminder of the complexities of conflict resolution. By addressing some grievances while ignoring others, the Treaty of Versailles highlights how well-intentioned decisions can yield unforeseen outcomes. As history reflects on this pivotal agreement, it underscores the importance of balancing justice with reconciliation, a lesson that continues to resonate in global diplomacy to this day. As we conclude this journey through 25 monumental events that reshaped the course of human history, it becomes clear just how much the world we live in today is built upon these singular, pivotal moments. Whether it was the signing of a treaty, the discovery of a new medicine, or the fall of an empire, each of these events reminds us of the profound impact one moment can have in shaping societies, ideologies, and the future itself. These moments are not just markers of the past, but lessons for the present and future, urging us to reflect on the power of decisions, the weight of consequences, and the importance of learning from history to guide us forward. So now we turn to you. Which of these events do you find the most fascinating or impactful? Share your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed exploring these turning points in history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive like this again. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep discovering the moments that made history.